Purdue's back. Semi-quick turnaround here for the Purdue Boilermakers. Played on Tuesday night or Wednesday night, excuse me, against the Washington Huskies. Play Saturday afternoon against the Penn State Nittany Lions. Another kind of afternoon Saturday game. Students will be coming back from break. I do believe that students have tickets to that, so probably get a little bit more of a energetic atmosphere than we got on Wednesday night, but. Bringing in one of the worst teams in the Big Ten. However, it's a Penn State team that is coming off one of the more shocking results, I guess you could say, as far as losses go. And honestly, probably the best result for them on the season, even though it is a loss and a 2-point loss to Michigan. This Penn State team, I'll set the stage for you a little bit. They're 9-6 coming into this game, but their best win is over Navy. This is a team that's played a really, really, really weak non-conference schedule and is coming into conference play as one of the worst Big Ten teams, despite a semi-inflated record as far as you can go with that being 9-6. So yeah, I'll throw it to you, Ethan. Get your initial thoughts on Penn State.
Yeah, like you said, this is maybe the worst team on paper in the Big Ten. Now, results-wise, they're 0-4, but they've put up a fight against some of the major teams in the conference. We'll see how this, plays out over the rest of the season. But outside of a 41-point loss to a middling Indiana team, they lost by 4 to Michigan State. They lost by 8 to Illinois, and they lost by 2 with a chance to win at the buzzer against Michigan. So at the very least, the coaches, Mike Rhodes, they got this team fired up and ready to go out and fight with the big dogs. And for a Purdue team that's coming off, 2 games in which they got up to big 25-point leads, then kind of let their foot off the gas in, down the last, down the final 10 minutes or whatever down the stretch, and let those teams kind of come back in it and close it to like a, 10 to 12-point game and put at least a little bit of game pressure on Purdue to close out the last 2 minutes. I think they're going to be on high alert to not let the same thing happen against a team they should handle quite easily.
Yeah, I mean, this is a Penn State team that, looking at their schedule, 2 teams you'd expect to blew them out, Indiana and Pittsburgh on a schedule with Illinois and Michigan, but in all seriousness, it is somewhat shocking. I mean, this is a team that has that 40-point loss to Indiana and also has a 34-point loss to Pittsburgh on a neutral, just blown away by 2 kind of mediocre power conference teams. But then you look at the results against the top of the Big Ten. 4-point loss to Michigan State, 8-point loss to Illinois, 2-point loss to Michigan. This is a team that, gave a real scare to 3 of probably the top 5 to 6 teams in the conference. And they get the 4th, and they'll get a shot at the fourth of those teams in Purdue here on Saturday afternoon. But they've played up to their competition, I think, and so I think at the very least that deserves an extra second of looking and attention on them.
Yeah, kind of switching to Penn State's personnel here. Their best player, bar none, is Caden Mingo. He's a pretty dynamic scoring guard who would be a starter on a lot of Big Ten teams. This isn't quite like a, best player on a bad team that probably wouldn't play much elsewhere. Like, no, he'd be a major factor in any Big Ten team's rotation, but he's not playing right now. He's going to miss the Purdue game too, I believe. And that leaves Freddie DeLeon as their leading scorer. He's averaging 14 points, 4 rebounds, 2.5 assists, and a steal per game. 48% from the floor, 33% from 3. The offense is going to run through DeLeon, so expect CJ Cox to get that assignment. You shut down DeLeon. This is the second year for the team after starting his career at Tennessee, so kind of back for more, and he's definitely taken a step forward in his second year, coming into the Ace Baldwin role. Now Mingo is not playing, but outside of him, you're looking at Malai Tunka, who's another sort of score-first shooting guard, averaging 10, 3 and 3, but he's shooting 40% from 3 on decent volume, so he's at least a guy that you don't want to kind of leave alone in the corner, where he could hit a couple threes early in Mackey and make this a little tighter at the beginning than maybe Purdue wants it to be.
Yeah, I mean, even with Mingo out, I think this Penn State team kind of starts and ends with the guards. At the end of the day, this team goes as far as Mingo and DeLeon and Tunka go. Really, those are the three guys. They're shot makers, all three of them. You mentioned Mingo won't be playing. DeLeon and Tonka both have some good size, both 6'5", and I think that's going to be the starting backcourt. I will say that, as far as matchups go, this Penn State team, one thing that jumps off the page to me is their positional size. They're going to have a lot of size at each and every position. They're probably going to start Tonka and DeLeon in the backcourt. They'll play Eli Rice a lot at the 3, who's a 6'8" sophomore. Josh Reed, who's 6'8", 230, will play the 4 a lot. And then they've got a 7-foot freshman in Ivan Jurek, who, if nothing else, provides a little bit of size. And so it will be a little bit of an interesting matchup with this Purdue team that I think has shown at times a little bit of struggle against some positional size. I think back to the Memphis game when kind of an inferior team was able to muck up the game, be really physical, put some bigger defenders, some bigger wing defenders on Braden and on Fletcher and on CJ and guys like that, and kind of slow down that Purdue offense. So I'll be interested to see how Purdue's guards handle that.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned their size. They rank 14th in the country in average height. Like, this is a big team. And like you mentioned, Memphis found some success getting physical. Washington in the last couple of minutes when they were able to make a run at the end of that game. A big part of that was their size on defense, kind of frustrating Purdue's guards. Purdue this year, for better or worse, really for worse, I guess, has shown some struggles against dedicated physicality from bigger guards when they're really trying to pressure the ball and force Purdue into some turnovers. And that's the one thing a bad Penn State defense does very well. They turn the ball over, or they force a lot of turnovers without fouling. They're one of the best turnover rate teams in the country, and they foul among the least in the country. So that's going to be stylistically very interesting for Purdue. It's pretty well documented at this point that Purdue is just not drawing fouls at a rate at all close to what they did last year or the Edey years. They're taking more shots from 3, which is probably part of it. But regardless, that's going to be something that Braden Smith and the Purdue ball handlers are going to have to be cognizant of. Penn State's going to pressure the hell out of them, and they need to maintain their composure because they're probably not getting a bunch of cheap calls.
Yeah, you alluded to it, though, and I think the good news there is something you mentioned kind of in your monologue. This is a bad Penn State defense. This is one of the worst power conference defenses in the country. They don't really do anything besides force turnovers very well. They don't really guard the three-point line all that well. They're one of the worst in the country at three-point percentage. They're even worse from two-point percentage. They give up a lot of shots at the rim. They don't block anything. They give up a high two-point field goal percentage. They're allowing opponents to shoot very close to the rim. They're not pushing teams away. That's a lot of good news for a team in Purdue that has 2 bigs and wants to beat you up inside as much as they do on the perimeter with their guards. And so I think this is going to be a game where you see the front court really dominate. We mentioned the size that Penn State has, and they've got the positional size, but they start a 7-foot, 250-pound freshman at the 5. He's a guy that I just don't think is going to be physically quite capable of handling Clough and TKR on the glass and on the interior. And when the backups are in, I think this is a game that Jacobson's height is going to be able to really take advantage of some mismatches. Penn State has the 7-footer. He's not overly physical, and then beyond that, it's 6'9", 6'10", really at the 5 spot. And these are all guys who aren't going to be overly physical guys who are just going to push them around and push them off the block and whatnot. So I think this is a game that I expect Purdue's interior to dominate as much as I do the perimeter. And, I kind of think this Purdue offense is going to get whatever they want. You may see some turnovers here and there, but I do think that when this Purdue – this is one of those games where you look at the stat sheet, and it's like when this Purdue offense didn't turn the ball over, they shot like 80% from the floor.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, this will be a little bit like the Washington game, at least in my opinion, until, Purdue kind of fell apart at the end. But while they were building their lead throughout the game, they turned the ball over a lot, but we're also shooting like 70% from the floor. And so because Purdue was playing slow and they had a lot of turnovers, there weren't as many points as you might associate with just how dominant an offensive performance they had. That could be very, very similar to what happens here. Penn State's going to get some steals. That's what they do. And Purdue has been pretty good at taking care of the ball, but as we've said, teams that are physical and really press their guards have been able to force some turnovers against Purdue. But outside of that, they don't defend the three at all, and they are one of the worst 2-point percentage defenses in the country. They have 0 rim protection. Purdue will be able to get whatever they want inside with Trey Kaufman and Oscar Clough. Daniel Jacobson's going to come into the game and just get lob dunk after lob dunk. Purdue will score as many points as Matt Painter wants them to. If he's really slowing the pace down, Purdue might score 80 on some ridiculous 1.6 points per possession ratio or something like that. Or if Penn State's offense plays pretty fast, if Purdue decides to follow suit and turns into a little bit of a track meet, this could be a game where they threaten to score 100.
Yeah, and the one kind of facet we haven't talked about this game is on the glass, and Purdue's one of the best teams in the country on the glass, and it's a Penn State team that really hasn't been overly dominant, although they did – I think it is worthy to note they did out-rebound Michigan in their last game, which was partially why they were able to keep that game so close, is their ability on the glass. But this is a Purdue team that should have a hefty advantage on the glass. When you look at the full sample size of the season, this is a Penn State team that doesn't really rebound much on the offensive glass, and they're a little bit better on the defensive glass, but still 130th nationally. This is a team that I think that as much as Purdue can take advantage of the poor defense, I think they can take advantage of the poor rebounding as well. By Penn State, I think this is a Penn State team that you kind of see like Trey Kaufman-Renn and Oscar Clough looking at this front court like, we can punk these guys, we can beat these guys on the glass. And it wouldn't shock me to see a 15-20 rebound advantage kind of opened up here by Purdue if possible. I think that's something that they're going to try and really force, and we'll see where it goes. I bet that's a big point of emphasis. I think that kind of moves us into a good spot for projections, though. KenPom has this as an 86-65 win for Purdue. Obviously, it's at home in Mackey Arena. Penn State has a knack for overperforming against the top of the conference. Think that trend continues, or do you think the Purdue dominant streak carries on, Ethan?
I think Purdue keeps it rolling pretty convincingly. There's a couple of reasons for this. First, Penn State's been able to keep it close against the best teams in the Big Ten at home, or at least in Pennsylvania. One of those games at the Palestra. When they played at Indiana, that's when they got blitzed by 41. And, Assembly Hall, historic, this Indiana team, better than they were a year ago. That it's not Mackey, it's not this Purdue team. Also, this team really punked Purdue last year. Now, I know it's a lot of different personnel, right? Ace Baldwin's not there anymore. Braden's not going to be able to get his revenge. But this was a game that was like 25, 30-point deficit at some point, and CJ Cox did his freshman CJ Cox thing and closed it to a respectable 11 by the end, so the analytics look a little bit better. But, this was a game Purdue really had no shot in. Last year on the road at Penn State, combined with the fact that now 2 games in a row, Purdue's built 25-point leads and kind of let them fall away into, single-digit leads in the case of Washington. So I think Purdue's going to be motivated to come out and make a statement in the middle of a stretch where it's a little bit difficult for Purdue to get up. 3 home games, 2 of them 4 students are back against teams Purdue's expected to beat before an LA trip end of next week. So, I think it's all sort of pointing to a pretty comfortable Purdue win. I do think it'll be a pretty low possession game, so I don't expect Purdue to score a ton. Give me Purdue say 84-53.
I agree with you. I think this is going to be another Purdue dominant stretch. I think this Purdue team covers that 21-point spread. I think it probably gets a little bit higher possession just because I think Penn State will try and speed it up a little bit. I think that's how they're going to try and play offensively. They're going to try and beat that Purdue offense or that Purdue defense down the floor. Don't let them get set. Try and run on some turnovers. I think this Purdue team gets up into the 90s. This is an awful Penn State defense. Give me something like 96-72 in Purdue's favor. All right, on that note, I think that about does it. 15 minutes on one of the worst rosters in the Big Ten. I feel like we did our part. Fully expect this to be a pretty pretty crazy environment with students being back on campus. So I'm excited to watch this one. Thanks for listening, everyone. We will be back next week with a recap of this game. And yeah, so be sure to tune in.